A Father's Promise by Donnalynn Hess. Chapter 18. Another Goodbye. December 1939. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. Proverbs 25:11. If life depends on your ability to observe the world around you, said Oscar the next morning when he and Rudy started out for Rudy's first full lesson in survival. From what I can tell, Oscar continued, sharpening his knife on a rough stone as they walked along, you haven't seen or heard anything since you entered the woods. Rudy was growing a little tired of Oscar's comments on his inexperience in the forest. I haven't seen as bad as all that, he retorted. I haven't been as bad as all that. No, asked Oscar. He stopped abruptly. Close your eyes, he said defiantly. What for? Just do as I say. Rudy obeyed. Now, tell me what kind of tree you're standing beside. I don't know the name of it, answered Rudy. Then just describe it, said Oscar. Rudy hesitated. It looks like any other tree, he finally said in exasperation. Like any other tree, his tutor mocked. Do you know how many kinds of trees there are in the world, boy? And you're going to stand there and tell me they all look alike? Well, I didn't say that exactly, said Rudy, opening his eyes. Keep those eyes closed, Oscar ordered, and hold out your hand. As Rudy stretched out his hand, he felt Oscar lay something in his palm. There, I've given you a clue, Oscar said. Now tell me what kind of tree it is. Rudy ran his fingers over a tiny branch. It's a tree with needles, not leaves, he said, fearing to be any more specific. Well, said Oscar, at least you didn't tell me it was a Christmas tree, but feel it carefully. Are the needles short or long? Long, I think, said Rudy. They feel droopy. They feel kind of droopy, he added. Okay. Are they pointed or blunt at the tip? Pointed, said Rudy. Since you're so observant, open your eyes and look at the branch closely. Rudy did so. That's a branch from a Douglas fir tree, Oscar told him. If it had been a black spruce, the needles would have been short. If it had been a red cedar, they would have been small and scale-like. There are all kinds of needle trees, by the way, he added. Now that you know the name of at least one tree, look around again. Are all the trees about you Douglas fir trees? No, said Rudy sheepishly. Well, your first lesson's complete. You've learned how little you know. Oscar gave his usual smirk, but then he added more earnestly, now I'll be able to teach you how to really see, hear, feel, and even taste and smell like you never have before. Oscar was true to his word. Under his instruction, Rudy experienced a whole new world opening before him, and as he entered into it, he felt himself growing in body and mind. His improved forest diet made him physically stronger, and Oscar's merciless drilling forced him to be mentally alert. His senses became so acute that before long he could identify many of the trees and bushes not just by sight, but by touch. He could discern by taste or smell whether nuts and berries were safe to eat. He could hear even the smallest creatures scrambling through the thicket. He also became skillful in adapting and improvising. He learned not one, but several ways to trap, prepare, and cook meat. And he was careful, as Oscar had instructed him, to include the fat parts of the rabbit in his diet. He also learned how to build lean-tos, construct bush ladders, and even how to weave a rope from reeds collected from the riverbank. The visits to Anna's farm were his contact with the outside world. Except for Joseph, the men were friendly. Occasionally he accompanied them on their missions, but Oscar seldom allowed Rudy to participate, saying in his gruff way that he did not want any boy getting himself shot. Rudy was grateful, for he had a feeling that Oscar was really trying to protect him. Most often, the men went out without him, and he met Oscar later at a rendezvous point deep in the forest. By late December, Rudy was proud of how independent he had grown. Although Oscar never came right out and said so, Rudy felt like that he was proud of him as well. "You've learned a lot over the past few weeks," Oscar admitted, as he and Rudy set out for their usual nightly meeting at Anna's. "But I still have a few more tricks up my sleeve." Rudy was curious. "Like what?" "Well, now," Oscar said, as he afforded himself and Rudy a genuine smile, "if I told you, then I'd be talking myself out of a job." You don't have anything," said Rudy. Maybe not," said Oscar. As they approached Anna, they saw that the straw roof to the underground cooler was propped open. Oscar headed for it. "Anna," he called. "Yes," she answered. "Just making sure no one was stealing your food," said Oscar, peering down at her. "Rudy would be glad to help you carry anything in if you need it." "I can imagine," she replied, "or I can manage. You two go in. I think the men have some news for you." When they entered, Rudy noticed that there did not seem to be the usual hubbub going on. Several of the men were conversing in low tones while Joseph moved about the table, trying to overhear what they were saying. "What's the news?" asked Oscar, settling himself down in his usual place at the head of the table. The men seemed to hesitate. Their secretive manner was unusual. "Come on," Oscar snapped. "Out with it. We haven't got all night." Not with him in the room," said one of the rough-looking soldiers, gesturing towards Joseph. "You've never minded my being here before," said Joseph. "I mind it now," the soldier replied. Joseph pointed at Rudy. "You let him stay." "That's because he doesn't make speeches about how Hitler is going to save Poland." "Don't worry," said Joseph. "I've given up making speeches to your kind." "And I've given up making speeches in front of your kind," replied the soldier. A heated argument seemed inevitable, but just then Anna entered. She was carrying a large sack of potatoes. The men quieted, but she had heard enough to know that trouble was brewing. "Go out and gather some kindling," she said to her nephew. "That can wait," said Joseph. "No," she said, walking over to him. "It can't." And the look on her eyes discouraged him from further argument. Reluctantly, he put on his hat and coat and went out to get more wood. As soon as Joseph had closed the door behind himself, Anna approached the table and laid the sack down. She began collecting bread and cheese for them as well. "What's all this?" asked Oscar, growing annoyed at the secrecy. "I asked her if she had any food she could spare," replied the man who had just been arguing with Joseph. "We'll be needing it for our trip." Oscar, impatient at the best of times, glared at the soldier. "What trip?" he shouted. "Will you get to the point?" "We're planning to move closer to the German stronghold," the soldier said. "We've gotten word that a reliable source on the location of a major German supply line." A second soldier announced somewhat boastfully, "With the ammunition we have been able to get, we could do some real damage." Another explained. Rudy had never seen the men so animated. They spoke excitedly, cutting in one upon another. By blocking off their food and ammunition, we could weaken their whole front line. These skirmishes we've been involved in are barely noticeable. This is our chance to do more. But we have to move quickly. The Germans are constantly shifting the supply line for protection. Hold on here, Oscar demanded. Everyone grew quiet. How far away is this? He asked. It might take us 2 days to get there, said the rough-looking man. Oscar sat thinking a moment, running his fingers over his beard. Then he turned to Rudy. What do you think? Do you want to go? How long would we be gone? Asked Rudy. We don't plan on coming back until the war's won, said one soldier with a thump of his rifle butt on the floor. If we succeed in this expedition, another explained, we move further up the line. Rudy hesitated. The thought of moving further from Warsaw was not at all appealing, so he did not want to lose Oscar either. I don't think I'd be much help, he said. Then he added, more out of duty than conviction, but I don't see why you can't go, Oscar. I'm not leaving you, Oscar replied. Rudy glanced up, relieved and a little pleased to hear him say so. Embarrassed, Oscar scowled at his men as though he had not said anything at all. Listen, Oscar, we need you, one of his men pleaded. Besides, for weeks now you've been bragging about how smart the boy is, someone added. Rudy looked at Oscar and noticed that he was fidgeting in his chair. This time the gruff man could not ignore what had been said. Well, I have told them that you're doing pretty well, Oscar admitted. Of course they know it's because you've had a good teacher. That's right. He's had a good teacher. Now you can make it on his own. You can, can't you? Asked the roughly looking man, turning toward Rudy. Yeah, I guess so, Rudy said unenthusiastically. Why don't you want to go? Oscar asked him. When my father comes back, he said, he'll come back to Warsaw. I want to be close by when he does. The men at the table said nothing, but several of them exchanged glances, and Rudy could see by their expressions that they did not think his father would ever really return. Rudy was trying hard not to let their skepticism overtake him, but he seemed to be losing the battle until Anna interrupted. The boy's right, she said. When his father returns, he will come first to Warsaw looking for him. You think he should stay? Asked Oscar, turning to her. I do, she said. Rudy felt hopeful once again. Then you should stay, Oscar concluded, turning back to Rudy. Then he added, after some hesitation, but I must go with the others. Rudy tried to hide his disappointment, but could not. I must go, Oscar continued, because I want to do my part to end this war. I want to make sure that men like your father can return as soon as possible. Rudy nodded, but Oscar returned to his men. When do you leave? Tonight, the first soldier said. That way we can make the attack on Christmas Eve, another explained. They'll be sure to be doing some celebrating. Their guard will be down. Oscar looked doubtful. Are you ready? Yes, the men replied in unison. A couple of us met earlier this afternoon to collect the ammunition we had hidden. The rough-looking man told him, and of course Anna has provided these supplies. Then I guess that settles it, Oscar said. He placed a hand on Rudy's shoulder before getting up to leave. Here, take this, he said, and he unwrapped his red woolen scarf from about his neck and handed it to Rudy. You'll need it more than I will. Besides, I can get it from you when I return, he said, and then he turned to go. Rudy took the scarf and lingered behind, waiting for the remaining soldiers to take their leave. You're welcome to stay here until Oscar returns, Rudy, said Anna, approaching him as he stood in the doorway of the cottage. He was about to take her off her when he saw Joseph returning. Remembering Joseph's bitter speeches, Rudy decided to go back to the forest. There was no denying the fact that if he stayed with Anna, Joseph would provoke him. A fight would be inevitable and unwise. Thanks, But I'll make it just fine, he said. Oscar's been a great teacher. Just ask him. He'll tell you. He'll tell you so himself. I have no doubt that you'll make it, she said. But remember, she continued, as if she sensed what he was thinking, you need never be afraid to come here. I'll be here if you ever need anything, ever do need anything. And bending down, she kissed him on the cheek. Her words gave Rudy both courage and comfort. I'll remember, he said. And as he turned to go, he determined that when the war was over, he was going to bring her the biggest, brightest bouquet of flowers he could find.